Hey guys, RPG map guy here. Um, just some things to think about um, when you are making maps um, for your live presentations. First off, what what is it that the players know about the world? And this would sway your approach to many different ways of presenting your map. Like, do they know the basic topography of your entire world, or do they just know a small section of it? And um, in case you're listening in and you hear some weird screaming in the background, we have a daycare here, so it's just kids playing in the other room. Um, some of the things that you may think about is the material that you're using for mapping, and whether or not that information that you're putting down on the map can be manipulated as you play your sessions. So I've got a few suggestions here. Um, you know, this will also get into actually making maps itself. So I'll get into that in the second half of this video once we get through this area here of presenting some of the ideas that I have here for GMs to think about. So first off, there's a lot of cool stuff that you can buy, although you can make this stuff yourself, and I'll show you basically how. Like, Paisio has these map boards that you can purchase, and they're pretty simple, easy to use. You use the I'm using the Staedtler non-permanent Lumicolor overhead projector pens. They work really well for actually all of these things that I'm going to be showing you. So I just buy these personally by myself in the multicolor packs and that sort of thing. Um, they're 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 reasonably priced. I mean, you can get them at if you're in America, I guess it's an Office Depot. Um, it's also in Canada. Staples, that sort of thing. They got some reasonable prices. These are great. You can do like your your typical dungeon mapping, and you can also do like your overland, and maybe you can get an entire world down on this entire grid. Now this is where you have to decide on how much information the players know about your overland map before you present it to them. You could just do like an entire outline of your known extents of the world, and then have the players plot along, and you can add the features as they go along, which is totally feasible, cool. And if you have like a hard copy of your own map already made on graph paper, then you can transfer it square to square um, on this material as they go along. And that's where these dry erase pens, if you make a mistake, if you accidentally put something on one square which shouldn't be there, according to your other map as you're transferring it, well, you can always erase it. These things erase really easily. If you put a mark on here, and we'll just grab a wet cloth, basically gets rid of it. Go ahead and make sure that you got a dry paper towel or something, or tissue paper. Go over it with that just to make sure that all the wetness is gone before you start using your pen again. Because if you get your pen nibs wet, it kind of well, I would assume it would kind of deteriorate your ability to draw with these pens. But all in all, they've been pretty good. I've got a collection of these. Actually, I have a 11, 12-year-old son that he loves these things. In fact, I've made a few of these maps, and this kind of material, and I'll show you how to make them. And he uses them for his own imagination games and stuff like that. So that's one material that you can purchase. These are like, I don't know, maybe about $10, and you get a double-sided sheet. Comes with 2 colors on it, so you can enjoy that. Second thing I have here, this is pretty useful, is the maps that you can get that are rolled out. Here's some of my son's stuff on here. He's enjoyed doodling away on here. Easily erasable, although don't use some of the colors provided. There's some colors that might stain your map permanently, especially for this one. Although I haven't had any real problems with it. I mean, there's still some marks in here. That's because my son doesn't erase it very well. And I can go over the whole thing and erase it all, and it'll look good. And it comes with a hex side as well. So you have hexes on one side and squares on the other. And this is a real handy map. This is one of the larger, well, I guess it's a medium-large map. This is about 3 feet by 4 feet or so. And excuse me. And it's it's okay. This size, you could usually get a regular sized dungeon, quite a few rooms on it. Some guys go with the bigger ones, which I think those run at about $60-70 Canadian anyways. This one was like $40 Canadian, so I got that. It works really well. I mean, one method you can use. Now for those that want to be a little bit more thrifty with their money, here, I'll grab this over here. Now, this is that you get foam board, Bristol board. This is just a small chunk. This usually comes in like a big 32-inch by 20-inch or something like that. Something really big and huge that you can use. And although the Bristol board by itself is not good to draw and recycle your drawing on, you can buy this stuff here. It's an adhesive film. This stuff is from OpMart. I believe I got it from Staples. So this stuff comes in sheets, which roll out like, well, the sheet itself is really long. This is just an end piece here. It's got the grid on it just so that you can kind of mark out and cut areas, according to how big a size. It doesn't come with this square grid on it. It's actually clear, and it's really good stuff. And what I do is I use the clear and put it over top of the board, so you end up with, I'll show you here, a board that looks like this. And I'll use this actually to show you some examples with a different camera, of course, on how to draw symbols and draw symbols consistently, so that your map will look, reasonably, decent looking for your players. I've drawn the map on the other side for my kids of the this is the Keep on the Borderlands. Yeah, I guess that was the scenario. There was a little dungeon we put over here, so we added like a little, I don't know if you can see it, red going to the location, and the Caves of Chaos way up here, spoiler alert. And some other encounters that I haven't put on here yet, And I put a little village down here, which is a little different than the actual game itself, the scenario itself. So I changed a few things. But this is kind of just a really rough, version of a map. I did kind of like a shadowing on the back here, so that kind of emulates that it's kind of three-dimensional. The kids loved it. And there's different kinds of methods you can do with drawing force and stuff. This one I just kind of huck together really quickly, but the consistency factors is your shadowing being on a particular side or whatever, and that sort of thing. And if your forests are going to look like this on one side, put them, make sure that they're all consistent as it goes along. There's the marsh down here, of course, and the river running through. And you can you can use this, and we'll use this to practice doing different symbols, and it makes it a little bit more easier for you when you write this stuff down on paper, that you develop a style by using something like this that's reusable, and you can keep on practicing making mountains, and you can get better and better and better at it, and develop your own style based on repeating your artwork and getting it refined down to a particular level. And then once you've kind of got a handle on it, of how you're going to draw your symbols, then you can go ahead and take that to the paper and start drawing in pencil everything in on your sheet of paper, and then from there on go ahead and ink it in so it looks decent. So we'll get into that later on. So that's basically everything that I have to show you on this camera, and we'll continue on with our show with a different camera, different point of view, and just so that it makes it easier for you to see me drawing and figure out how you're going to utilize this kind of method of making symbols and stuff, and use it on your own mapping. Maybe you won't. I mean, you'll do your own kind of thing, but you can kind of get the basics of what I'm doing and apply it to yourself and develop your own style. So, all right. Alright, let's go over some basics here. So if we want to keep a consistency of drawing, it's best to start practicing, like, say, mountains, if you want them to be peaky like that, or whatever. Maybe you want them to be, kind of like this. Always, when you double up your mountains, go ahead and put one in front, one in behind. You could add details like that. However, just keep on repeating your, until you get somewhat of a style down. Say you want to do your shadows like this instead. It's entirely up to you. Go ahead and practice around. Try and get a consistency working. Once you've decided on how you're going to have your mountains look, whatever the case may be, keep at it. You might want to do cross hatching or something like that. Mountains can look cool that way. You might want to try that. Whatever you decide. Could go with just a thick kind of look, maybe a gradual. Maybe you want to do pointillism, you start making your dots, and then gradually getting thicker onto one side. It's entirely up to you, you know. You put a couple in there just to but the thing is, once you get a style going, keep it consistent. Same thing with some plant life as well. Let's go ahead. This is where using something like this to kind of help you start making a style of your own, using a board like this really helps in your, you know, figuring out some inking techniques. Well, I'm doing these in really large scale. You're likely going to be, you know, working, you know, making smaller mountains like this. Depending on the size of your drawing too. I'm kind of doing this awkwardly because I've got my arm around a camera right now. So usually start from the top and, you know, work your way down. Hills, I mean, you could go with the typical symbol like that. Now this also depends on how you're going to present your map. You could have these hexagons like so, and then you could go ahead and each hex devise a symbol that maybe you want to use. Maybe you want your hills to look like the typical Greyhawk maps, putting the symbol in there. You could have your hills kind of go like this as well, you know, if you were doing them freehand, you know. Go ahead and add a little bit of shadowing to them or whatever. And then if for plant life, you could do, you know, your trees like the typical old token maps like this with the little round balls and maybe a couple of pointed ones as well as you go along. Put the little tree trunks in later on down below. You could do the your hills in amongst with say we do some hills like this, and we could add some trees, of course, you know, like so, you know, that sort of thing. This kind of makes them look like little lollipops, but you know, the detail all depends on the size that you're doing on your picture. Like when you're drawing them out, they're probably going to be little tiny guys like this when you're doing your details. So you know, it all depends on the size that you're making. If they're bigger like this, you could go ahead and put shading on them, of course, like so, you know, if you want, or make it kind of rough if you want to do it that way, you know. But with all the shading, always keep it consistent. Like if you're doing your shading, always do it on the same side as everything else. Otherwise, your trees aren't going to look. If you want to put downward shadows, this would work better if you were using like pencil, but using a thick pen like this, a little harder to do. But this basically gives you the idea. If you got your shading over on one side, keep it consistent in your drawing. Put the shading over on the right hand side. If you keep on doing that, make sure everything else follows suit on the same map on the right hand side. Okay, this is the typical kind of token map kind of shading that you see. Variants, you know, you can put, you know, add in little fill mountains later on, little, you know, texturing in here or whatever, you know, whatever you devise as your style, you know, go ahead and keep it consistent. You might, instead of, you know, you might want to do little lines instead on your mountains to kind of provide the approach on them, like so, you know, and that sort of thing, which is acceptable too. You know, it all depends on what you like as a game master, on how you want to present your map. But once you get this kind of style done, progress over to paper and do this all in pencil, and then that way you get all your penciling done in a light pencil, and then take an ink pen and then go over all your details as you go through them, and you can you know, darken everything out with the pen, and then erase off the pencil later on. So, you know, with working within hexes, I mean, you could do it this way to make it easier for you to reproduce. Okay, I figure this would be a little bit better to demonstrate working on a piece of paper just by using just two of my tools here on I'm just going to be using the pencil tool, and I will be using an inking tool. So just pretend that I'm working on paper, because I'm going to be using this like it's paper. So first off, we'll zoom in, and so you can kind of get a gist of what I'm going to do here. Now I'm going to be using pencil. Of course, I will put this on a different layer so it's easier to erase. So it'll be kind of like me simulating what it'd be like on paper. I'm drawing here on a Cintiq, so it's I'm actually drawing on a screen right now. So let's pretend that we're going to be using this whole piece of paper, but we're actually going to start in this little corner here, just to kind of do kind of like a continent, and I just want to do this kind of quickly, kind of show how to how a graph paper will work to your advantage when you want to zoom in on particular things. Because when you start off, let's kind of just draw out a vague kind of continent or whatever you want to call it. Okay, we just want to kind of just quickly make a shape, maybe a couple islands, you know, kind of idea, and you know, like so. Okay, and this is just rough. We can get into details later. This just kind of gives you an idea. We're gonna put, maybe we'll just have like a big lake here, a couple other features as well. I don't know. Whatever you decide. This is totally just off the cuff right now. Well, let me zoom in just a bit here so we can see how we're going to present this. So I'm using a blue pencil. You can use a gray pencil. I'm just making it blue so that's easier for you to kind of identify as my pencil marks. Alright, get back into my pencil. So I'm gonna say, okay, I'm looking at this and I've got a lake kind of feature here, so we're gonna have maybe we'll have some northern mountains kind of happening up over here. Okay, so we're just gonna rough in these features so you can kind of see. Maybe a valley in between here, but this area here will be all mountains. Maybe we'll have kind of like a bunch of mountains coming down this way as well, and maybe some over here and some smaller ones in the middle here. Okay, so it's kind of just the general idea of our plan. All right, so pencil this all in. We'll have some, rivers coming in from various directions, kind of idea. Maybe a few coming through here and maybe a long river coming in. Some rivers coming from here. A river coming in here, coming through here, blah blah blah. Some rivers coming out this way. Alright. General idea. Now I'll go ahead and simulate that we're actually going to start working on some ink. But first off, let's kind of like refine. Maybe we'll chisel this in, kind of a bit. Sometimes I work, totally off the cuff like this, and work on details as we go. So we're going to give it kind of that sort of effect, but we will be using a pen instead. Let's see how this drafting pen looks. We want it to be black, of course. Okay. Drafting pen basically goes in, it comes in one kind of shape. Take our eraser here. So you can see this basically works the same as pencil and paper, except you can't erase the ink. So always practice with your ink separately so you can try out different things. I bring this down to maybe about 1.8 pixels. Whoop, that's the wrong one. Back to pen. We'll go at 2 pixels for an ink pen. Okay, nothing special about this is going to be reacting. It's going to have the same width and characteristics as you would with an ink pen. So there we go. Well, we'll make this a little bit bigger. Sorry, our big eraser now. There we go. Back to our pen. So you might want to zoom in a bit and work on this. Well, you can't zoom in if you're using actual paper. So, and this is a little better than me drawing on a piece of paper, because my hand will be in the way and will be kind of like, causing you a little bit of grief seeing exactly what I'm doing. So this is actually a little better. So we'll kind of do some cool details. We'll chisel it a little bit. We'll add some fjords of some form there, and keep on going. So make this a little bit more edgy over here. We'll make this a little smoother. Maybe we'll have some sands over on this side. Now this is when you start thinking about the scope of your adventure. Now a lot of people will go ahead and make a huge continent and And I'm one of those people too that do that. I start with a continent because I always want the extra space for, doing stuff in. And you can see I did a little bit of a mistake here with the pen, so I'm gonna take my eraser and nudge that out. This is the cool thing about working with digital, because you can always erase your terrible stroke marks. Alright, so I make an island over here. And so when you design like your world, like let's pretend this is our world in its entirety, you'll probably want to make this a little bit bigger or whatever. But for the sake of time and constraints here of what we're doing, we're just making it small like this. So we apply basically the same things I was talking about when I was drawing on that on the foam board covered with the I guess it's like an acetate covering. Same sort of theory applies when you start making your mountains and working on that sort of thing. You go ahead and keep everything consistent. All your shading will be consistently the same. So there we go. And there's another huge lake over there. So starting with mountains, usually start at the top and work your way down. However it's most comfortable for you. So I'm just going to start just doing some details over here. And we'll go ahead and mountains like so. Usually the big ones first. Like that. And we can add some little ones kind of to show that it's a gradual inclination from one to the, from small hill-like features to more mountainous kind of stuff going on here. So here's where we start shading. Go ahead and give it the shading over on the one side like so. And there's no real method or reason, just kind of artistically do what you think looks good. To make them kind of look 3D-ish. This is kind of like a token style, map. Really kind of simple. So we've got our mountains with the shading on the one side here, etc., etc. And then of course maybe we have like a forest in the middle here. So this is where we start, doing our little circular trees. Now you can go into pencil. Let's go back into pencil here and detail where these forests are going to be. We'll have a forest here, and then we'll have a forest here. It comes through and it takes over this area like so. Okay, so now we have kind of the idea. Of course I drew that entirely on the wrong layer, so let's just erase all that. and put it on the right layer. And you don't have to worry about layers when you're on paper, because you'll be able to work on that there. Okay, so we'll have a forest coming through here. We'll have a forest basically taking over this area here. Okay, now we'll get back to our ink layer and our drafting pen, like so. So now we start drawing in these circles as if they were the forest. So now we got a forest happening here. Okay, so it's entirely up to you how you want it. You can have pointed trees as well in here and add those in. It's good to go to the edges, the extents of your forest. Okay, and then keep on drawing. Of course, it'll look better with a larger area that you'll be working on, rather than a little confined space like I'm doing here. I'm only doing a small area because it's going to be a lot quicker, faster to do. So we have, this area kind of detailed as such, and we'll have like a river coming through here, river coming up here, and of course do the mountains first up over there. I'm just doing this really quickly so that we can get onto the second approach here. So let's pretend we did all the details here, and now we go in with our eraser, which you will do in real life, and erase all the pencil marks like so. So this is me erasing all the pencil marks. Even though we're not done, it's fine. I'm not going to continue on with this map. I'm just trying to show you the general idea here. And this is where we're going to get into the benefits of working with a grid. Because when you've got a grid like this, and you learn this kind of early in art school, where you can, we'll go ahead and use this, pull back, where if you wanted to blow up an area, because when you get a whole world done like this, all detailed out in this kind of form, you don't want to actually ship this as a player's map unless they do know the whole extent of the world. But say, for example, they only know, and I'll get into a box here, and I just do, we'll go ahead and draw in a box in red, like so. So let's say, we're going to grab, say, a Europe-sized chunk of the territory that you want to detail further. So I'm just showing you this for example. Say that you wanted to grab, say, this area from here on into here, and we'll just say just like that. You wanted to grab this area and zoom it in on a different map. So I'm doing it on the same map here because it's just convenience sake. So let's move ourselves over so we have some room, so we can kind of replicate. Now we have 1, 2, 3 squares by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares, 3 by 5. So let's start doing this. We're going to make a grid. Since it's 3 by 5, I get my pencil here. Just kind of show you what I'm going to do. Everybody seems to go in about, like these are like 20 miles or whatever. So if you divide them 4 by 4, then you'll have these as 5-mile increments, right? 5 miles per square. Whereas on this map it's 20 miles per square. So there we go. We're basically pretending that this is an entirely different piece of paper, and you're going to recreate that section right over here on your bigger piece of paper, so it kind of zooms it in for you. So and we kind of look at each square here, and we kind of emulate the details. We know that the coastline is coming in like this, and it almost reaches to the edge of that, and it doesn't have to be exact, but as close as you can get it. So we know it comes around like this. You can see it's got that point over here. It's coming in over the other edge, not quite reaching into here, but we can a little bit. Just give you some creative license. Okay, and this goes into a river over here. We come back out over here, and we're about halfway, so almost like that. So our river comes through, goes down, comes back up like this, and becomes the tip of this crazy looking lake. It comes down over here, so the lake comes out like that. Okay, whatever shape. Alright, so our lake is here like this. And it's the same thing, draw it out in pencil, and our coastline comes across like this. Okay. And if you can kind of see what I'm getting at, this is blowing up exactly what we have on this map here. And this edge of the lake comes across like that. Now, it comes down and then comes back up. Actually, it comes up a little bit further like that, and then comes back down, and then becomes kind of like that. Become a river that goes off this way, and so we know that this here is all lake. Okay, to the river, and this over here will all be, oh, it goes all the way here. This will be all the forest, and the forest comes out there, and there'll be some mountains that come over here. Okay, we might have some hills and stuff like that over here and that sort of detail. So now we basically taken this and blown it up to this size. So now we can go in, and since I'm only using pencil would be rather light. Oh, did I draw it on the wrong? I must have drawn it on the wrong layer here. Let me check. Nope. Where are we here? How come I am not getting any? Four. Oh, 3. Tell me it's on the first layer. Oh, weird. I don't know what layer it's on. There, it's layer 4. it's a bit of a delay, I guess. Before now, layer 2 is our ink layer, right? Or some sort of layer. Oh, I guess layer 2 was our pencil layer. Alright, so we'll use this for pen now as well. We'll go ahead and change our ink to a black. And we'll start to work with the drafting pen, of course. And now we start to detail out. So you can kind of guess this is going to be the edge of our map. So let's kind of make this like a map. This will be like an actual page size when you're doing it. So this will be taking up I'm just doing this just to be a little creative in presenting my map. Okay, so there's our map page, and now I'll go in a little further here as this will be your piece of paper. It'll be large like this, and of course your coast comes across like this. Now this is where we can use our creative license to go kind of accentuate all these details because you're really close up now, just like a Google map zoom. And here's our lake, how it goes, and we start adding our own flavor to the coastline of this huge lake. Okay, and then we've got our river comes flowing out here. And remember, it was kind of a smooth line on our zoomed out map. In this case, it's going to be a little bit more jaggy. We kind of work with the shapes, and now we've got more of a river that kind of has that flowy look to it. And of course we have a river that comes out this way, so we'll go ahead and give it a little bit more creative movement on there. And of course this will be all forest, and of course the mountains come out over here, so we can start working on the mountains. Kind of bring them maybe a little bit into the forest a bit, kind of to show that it's not all one-dimensional here. So now we start detailing out the mountains. And we'll start doing the forest. Maybe we'll do a little different kind of style here. Just another way of doing forests, especially when you don't have like a starting edges coming off the map. So a little bit of a stippling on the edge, kind of accentuate the edge of the forest. And you can do, like this kind of thing along and fill it out with, typical forest-like stippling and that sort of thing. You can take a pencil crayon or whatever, and let's say I'm going to be using a pencil crayon. go ahead and add another layer to kind of show a pencil crayon effect here. My pencil, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. So let's say with my pencil crayon, that's not a pencil crayon, let's undo that. Control Z, Control Z, Control Z, there we go. We need pencil. Alright, there we go. So let's put this actually down below because it's going to kind of look like this kind of effect. So we start using our pencil crayon to go ahead and give this kind of effect here. We start drawing in the green. I always use pencil crayons myself. I like just working with them. I like overlapping the colors of the pencil crayon. So, and this is only just really quick example. You'll fill it in a lot better than I will. I'm just doing this as quickly as I possibly can just for time constraints because this is going to be a long video. Okay. Of course we're going to continue on doing this darkening, and with the way pencil crayon works along the edge, you can kind of work a little bit more darker color along the edge here, like so. And of course, you know, as in between where you got this stippling, kind of helps to kind of make this kind of, you know, little bit of dark in between where these peaks of trees are popping out and that sort of thing. So you keep on doing that all the way to the top here. For the water, let's go with a light blue. So you go ahead and start, you know, now it's entirely up to you whether or not you want to add color to your ink and paper drawings, but you know, it adds a little bit of a nice touch to it. So quick, so you know that this is a lake over here, not just some line going across there. Another way to kind of show that you know, you have a lake is you can go ahead and let's go back to our ink layer here, go back to here, but we will go to our drafting pen once again, down to back to 2 pixels. You can do this along the edge to kind of show that it's, you know, waves or something. Only maybe do it a little bit more neater than what I'm doing. But even in this rough kind of way that I'm presenting it here, you can get the idea that this is water along this edge here. Okay. And if you want to go ahead and actually make that into water with the pencil, you can do it. Back to kind of the bluish kind of, this is going to be out in the ocean. Whoop, let's undo because I did it on the wrong layer again. You won't have to worry about that as a person using pen and paper. I know with pencil crayons, if you go over your ink like this, you can still see your ink coming through. You might want to go ahead and repeat your inking over, refine it a little bit more. Alright, so do. And pencil crayon lasts longer than ink pens. Use an ink pen, you're going to be running out of ink. Pencil crayon, you can kind of, a pencil crayon will last a lot longer. Okay. Very rough. Okay. And you can do a gradual darkening as you go along here if you want, from light to the edge to eventually to a darker shade as you get into the deep water. However you want to present it, you can. Okay, and we'll do some streaks going across here to kind of represent waves. This is not still water out here. Very choppy and rough as you go out. So now we kind of got this detailed out a little bit. Now we can start putting in our cities and that sort of thing. We can color this into let's say a light kind of forest kind of green if you want, for grasslands. Okay, like so. Or you can purely go with symbols and mark everything out if you wanted to. Like I say, this is really fast and rough. Not my finest work, but gives you an idea that you too can bust out a map if you take your time and just work on keeping a consistent symbols, consistent idea throughout all your maps. I think consistency, even if if you think it looks too simple or whatever, as long as you keep it all consistent, your players will understand it. Once they understand, oh, blue is water, green is the land, and that darker green stuff is forest. Those V-shaped, inverted V-shaped things are mountains. Your players will continually comprehend what you've put out before them and understand, well, this is our GM style, and it's fine. It gets the thing across. Most players don't mind even just stick figures and that sort of thing. As long as there's a good story, it's awesome. And I think that's way more important than having pretty maps. Let's get this all. See, if I was using actual pencil crayons and stuff, this would take forever. Plus, my hand would be in the way. But I am doing this like I would be drawing it out with pencil crayons and stuff. So let's go with, let's start getting into the browns here for the mountain area. Let's go kind of like that. Okay, so now our mountains will have a typical kind of color showing that this is going to be a rougher kind of territory. Of course, we might have some hills in here, so let's go ahead and add some reference to more of an edgy, hilly kind of region here, and maybe along here. Kind of give it the same kind of colored coding as that, only now we will actually, now let's go ahead and do our mountains, I mean our hills, like so. Okay, you can start from the top or the bottom, whatever works. Just remember to overlap them accordingly. So now we've got the details of this map working out. So if you let's zoom back out and kind of look at what we've done here. So we've actually only detailed this area, and this will be where most of the campaign takes place. Now this allows you to further on, later on, attach more maps as you expand outwards, and you can work on these in between, you know, their sessions while they're, you know, playing around in this area, having fun at, you know, whatever city you have detailed out there. So let's do that. Let's put in some towns and stuff like that as well. Where the heck am I going? So go into here. Looks kind of weird when you zoom up like that. We are in the ink layer. Let's draw in, we want a city over here. So keep your symbols kind of consistent. If this is what a city marker looks like that. You will be working on paper, which we can actually have a little bit more control than what I am using here. And if you call this, well, we'll call this the town of Plank. And go ahead and you know, make whatever however you want to. You can use calligraphy or whatever. I was never really good with calligraphy, and we'll call this Wood. The town of Wood and the town of Plank, both at odds with each other. Massive war between the two. Their boundary is right over here. There's a war going on between the two. So you can go ahead and detail out borders if you want. Town of Wood, their borders only extend out to here and reach the edge of this river. Ta-da! So whatever details you want to put in, I mean, it's entirely up to you. It's however you go ahead and create your world. Just remember consistency, shadows. We have shadows over on this side of the hills. You might want hills with forests in them, so go ahead and draw some forest indicators. Maybe you want to use this green back here again, so you would grab the same green pencil. For me, it's just grabbing like that, and let's say this indicates a little bit of wood and maybe a scattered trees kind of idea. Any of these are great plains in between here with some scattered woods and, you know, bushes, that sort of thing. You could put in lines and, you know, do this sort of thing for, you know, kind of like a scrub kind of indicator. If you want to do that, it's totally fine. Just use your imagination and keep on going with it. Like I always say, consistency in your map works all the time. Being inconsistent confuses people, makes your maps confusing. So there you go. So showing you how to blow up your map to a larger scale by using the grid lines. Let's go ahead and get rid of our, let's see, yeah, our pencil lines here. So there you go. So I've given you basic tools on how to handle going from your large map to a more detailed map using the grid. I mean, if you want to apply this to hexes, it's a little harder. In fact, it does work with hexes, except you have to turn your map by like 15 degrees or something, and then work on it again on hexes, because you draw lines off of hexes, and you start ending up with the hexes being turned slightly. So you have to compensate for that if you want to blow up off of a hex map. So I hope this helps you in figuring out how you can make maps and detail them out, and make them even more detailed by coming in closer in detail. Yeah, all I can say is good luck, have fun,